I'm a mechanical engineer. I normally talk to plumbers rather than architects. I'm hoping architects will be a better crowd. And I'm going to talk about where we think the gas industry in New Zealand is going to go over the next 20 or 30 years. Contrary to some opinions, it's not going away. We've got lots of gas, and we will have plenty of gas well into the future. The main things that I'm going to talk about today are why don't we just electrify everything? Let's get rid of those horrible fossil fuel guys, let's get rid of them tomorrow, and we'll just plug everything into the power grid and job done. Having hopefully put some of that to bed, we want to talk about why do we burn stuff on site. And then we're going to have a quick look at how we're going to get from our fossil gas that we've got now to hydrogen in the future. So, the challenge of electrifying everything. Just to put it in a bit of perspective, why not just electrify everything? These are some of the projects that we've been involved in around Auckland with gas water heaters. We've got PwC just across the road, a 5 Green Star rated building now, I think. We've got Pacific Residences, Voco, Hyex, and so on. We go around the town. The Travelodge, the Quest Hotel in Beaumont Street that was the gas company back in the day. The new police station in College Hill. Hopefully none of you have had cause to have a Rinnai shower at the new police station. Various other buildings. Homeground, the new Auckland City Mission homeless shelter. Rinnai gave them the plant for the building. The old City Council building that's now apartments by Aotea Square. The old Becker building in Vincent Street. We used to go there on a Friday night for drinks. I think Becker are moving now, so it's probably the old Becker building. Queen's Residences, new AUT accommodation building. What's that one? Sintra on Queen, Bianca off Queen, Airedale, Tetra, Crown on Sintra, Carlaw Student. You notice lots of big boilers in, the numbers are the kilowatt outputs of the water heating systems. Nice clean students in Auckland. More student accommodation, Northern Club, the International, big system there. One of Auckland's leading hydraulic engineers has got an apartment there, so he specified himself plenty of hot water. What's that one? Metropolis, 19 Anzac Street, Scene 2 and Scene 3, and Les Mills Gym. If you were there this morning, you had a nice hot Rinnai shower. Pacifica, just across the road, must be the tallest building in New Zealand other than the Sky Tower. Someone was talking to me this morning, has an apartment there. He had a nice hot shower this morning. And Britomart, 5 Green Star rated hotels. So Green Star rated buildings, we have high efficiency gas systems installed in them. So a whole bunch, and that's not all the buildings, that's just a few I could think of off the top of my head. So lots of gas, lots of fossil gas being burnt in Auckland this morning. Obviously we need to change that over the next 30 years or so. What we're going to do now is have a very high level look at kind of the energy we use in New Zealand and where we get it from and what the challenge is just to simply electrify it. So this is MBIE's, they put out New Zealand Energy Data File each year, and this is over the last 20 years the mix of what we call primary energy. So it's the energy input. It obviously doesn't include wind or the solar radiation hitting the country or the tides, but it's generally the energy that we use. Now remember, it's energy input. So let's go back to pre-COVID to 2019 and take a slice out and have a look at our energy input in 2019. So we've got a bit of coal, quite a bit of oil, obviously, bunch of natural gas, some hydro, a bunch of geothermal, and some others, which is mostly wind. So now what we're going to do is take away Methanex. So in Taranaki, there's a big plant that makes methanol that's used in all sorts of chemical, and so it's not kind of part of the energy game, it's a chemical game. So let's take that off the natural gas, and we're left with this energy inputs and the energy outputs. So the big difference between the energy input and the energy output, the actual useful energy we have available to us, there's two main differences. The first is, so that's Waireki, the first is geothermal. Geothermal is hugely inefficient. It's just how it is, it's not running it down. So it's about 15% of what we drag out of the ground, we actually manage to generate electricity. So that blue bar shrinks right down. The other one, of course, is our cars. The architect's favourite Ford Ranger. Our petrol cars operate about 30%, our diesel cars about 40%, so I've called it 45%. We obviously use oil for a bunch of other things, but this is just a really rough overview. So we end up with, on the right, that lot of energy outputs. So let's take away the renewable stuff that we're already using, and we're left with this set of energy that if we wanted to electrify everything, that we would have to find electricity for this amount of energy. The units are petajoules if you care. So we'll blow that up a bit so we can have a bit of a closer look at it. To get that amount of energy output, useful energy, we're going to need this much of electricity input, again roughly. So what's contributing to that? Your Tesla, your electric car, is going to do a heck of a lot better in terms of energy efficiency than an internal combustion engine, but it's going to be about 65%. So we're going to need to add about 50% to what we were getting out of the oil in order to make electricity if we all want to drive around in our Teslas. The other difference there is the natural gas. So I've made an assumption that some of the natural gas will replace with electricity at high efficiencies. We might have heat pump water heaters in our houses. We need to bear in mind that our residential and commercial energy is relatively low compared to the whole of the country's energy use. Most of the energy content is used in industry in high temperature boilers, and they aren't going to be able to use heat pumps at high efficiency. They may have to use electrode boilers, so at relatively low efficiencies. So we need a little bit more electricity than what we're using natural gas at the moment if we were to decide to replace all the natural gas. So the natural gas, the grey bar, has gone up a bit. So we're looking for this amount of electricity. Where are we going to get it from? So that's the Clyde Dam on the Clutha River. That is what our current hydro output is in New Zealand, the yellowy orange bar. So, and that assumes that electricity output is that we're going to get rid of the aluminium smelter at Tiwai Point, and the Aussies are going to go and smelt their aluminium somewhere else, and we will end up with all our electricity actually available for us to use. So that's our current hydro, including Manapuri, which basically powers the aluminium smelter. So that's our current hydro. So we need 2 lots of our current hydro, we need 3 lots of our current hydro, and a bit more if we just wanted to electrify everything. So we're all aware, I think, of the challenges that we've faced trying to build new hydro or new large-scale plants in New Zealand, and it's very difficult. So I don't know where we could get 3 lots more of hydro plus a bit more in order to just plug everything into the wall. If we take the Clyde Dam, and if you're as old as I am, you'll remember there was a fair bit of controversy about building the Clyde Dam and flooding the valley behind it, as there has been for most of the clean green hydro projects that have been built. So the Clyde Dam, if you ran it full bore, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and nothing ever broke down, you might get 13 petajoules and change out of that dam. Now, and the big thing about that is if you had enough water. And so I think in reality, if you did that most years, Lake Wanaka would be a little stream running down the bottom of the valley, and Lake Wakatipu would be the same. So you can't actually get that out of it, but for the purposes of the exercise, that's its theoretical maximum capacity. So we're looking for about 300 PJs. We'd need 22 Clyde dams in order to achieve that. So I don't think it can happen. I haven't seen any proposal from the government or any government to build that many dams. So I think it would be a real challenge to just electrify everything. Once we have, let's say we build those power stations, we've then got to get it from where we've generated to our houses and our industry. So we double the generation, or more than double the electricity generation. We're going to have to double the transmission. I think we're all aware, and it's probably more of a generation problem than a transmission problem, that we've had some short-term problems with electricity in the last couple of years. The Transpower has had a number of grid emergencies. Having got it from the generating site to where we need it, we then need to distribute it around. So there isn't enough capacity going down your street right now for everyone to come home at 5 o'clock and plug in their Tesla. It just won't happen. Just to give an idea of the scale, Vector's electricity and gas network, and most of it is electricity, is a bit over 4 billion. So if we all did actually want to go home at 5 o'clock at night and plug our Tesla in, it's going to cost an awful lot, and there's going to be an awful lot of disruption to expand the electricity network enormously. Right, this is one of my favourite slides, being a gas guy. Don't worry, it's electrical smoke. It's different to gas smoke. It's not bad for the environment. And they've carefully designed these windmills so that the other two fans there are blowing that smoke outside the environment. So it's not a problem. So we come to the next thing that we were sort of going to talk about, which is why do we want to burn stuff on site? What's the point of bringing the gas to your house and burning it there? Why do it? Why bring the firewood in? What's wrong with bringing the electricity if we could have sufficient capacity to do it? This is a bit of copper wire that's mostly going under your driveway down to the electricity meter at your house. And this is not commercial, this is just to give a sense of scale. Most of us at home, if you go and have a look at your electricity set of breakers, you'll find that you've got about 65 amps of electricity available to you, which is about 15 kilowatts of power. Many of us have got a little piece of plastic pipe going down, those of us that had gas showers this morning, or have got some bottles outside. That little bit of cheap plastic pipe can do about 67 kilowatts of energy down the driveway. So it's about 4.5 times more energy capacity that my gas connection at home has to my electricity connection at home. And for the big buildings around Auckland, it's not much different. So when we compress gas and shift it about the place in order to burn it in your gas heater or your flame fire or your cooker or your water heater at your house, it's very energy dense. the energy is compacted into a very small space, and so we can shift it and get it to your house in a relatively cheap bit of pipe, and we can get a lot of it there. You're not constrained. The second reason we want to burn stuff on site is the gear to do it is pretty cheap, and it's got a lot of capacity. So if we take standard water heater that some of you I'm sure will have hanging on the side of your house, in Auckland this morning you could have had 3 simultaneous 8 litre a minute showers, and that water heater would do it. So I've heard people talk on the radio, I'll just get an electric instantaneous water heater. So an electric instantaneous water heater, the largest one you can buy, will give you about 1 5 litre a minute shower in Auckland. If you're in Wanaka, a whole lot less. And to get that one shower out of an electric instantaneous water heater, it's a similar size, maybe a bit cheaper than a gas instantaneous water heater. It'll use 2/3 of the available power in your house. So if you wanted to have one of those, just electrify it and yet not have hot water run out, you could go to the power company and ask for a larger electrical supply, which right now probably won't cost you a lot extra. In the future, when everyone's coming home and plugging their Teslas in, the chances are that the cost of having that additional electricity supply may go up. But you could do it, so long as the person in the kitchen this morning didn't put the toaster down and turn the jug on at the same time. You could have one measly shower. So it's not easy just to electrify that gas white box on the outside of your house. So again, the message is it's energy dense, we can get it to you quickly and cheaply. So the other thing is, if we look at commercially now, we tend to think about 50 kilowatt modules. It's 40 odd people, maybe a bit less, maybe 25 odd people, 50 kilowatts of energy. That'll give you your showers in the morning in one of the hotels or apartment buildings around here. So if we look at the gas boiler, if you walk into your local merchant, you'll pay about $3,000 for that 50 kilowatt module of gas boiler. You can go and get a heat pump, and you're going to pay about $30,000 for a 50 kilowatt heat pump, right? It's 10 times the price. So in the building installations I showed at the start, there might be, I don't know, a dozen gas boilers and a couple of thousand litres of storage. So you want to convert that to heat pump, you're going to say, well, what I'll do is I'll have less heat pumps and more storage, which would be a perfectly sensible thing to do. Well, your 1,000 litres of storage, that's going to cost you about $10,000. If we look at the weight, not to mention the size, your gas boiler, hang it on the wall, 30 kilos, job done. We get engineering firms all the time contacting us, asking us for quite accurate weight estimations of our hot water plant. I'm a mechanical engineer, a building services engineer, not a structural engineer. I kind of thought that these big high-rise buildings, we could put as much weight as we liked on the roof of them and they were super strong and it wouldn't be a problem. But apparently not. We can't just go adding multiples of sort of 1,500 kilos to the tops of buildings and they'll be fine. We've got to be very conscious of the weight. So a heat pump, roughly the same 50 kilowatts is 400 kilos. So a whole bunch of weight. And then if we've decided to use storage and reduce our boiler capacity, we're going to be looking at about 1,300 kilos. So the cost and the weight is a big difference. Now, I got quite excited on Monday. I'm sure all of you got the same advertising email from ArchiPro as I got, and I scrolled through the list of exhibitors and I saw a couple of commercial hot water heat pump suppliers there, and I thought, awesome, that's really exciting. I'm a building services engineer, so what excites me might be a bit different to what excites you. But I thought I'll be able to go along and have a look at it. And so I walked around yesterday, no heat pumps, no storage tanks, so their gear is not here, right? You can go along to the Rinnai stand and there's a gas boiler assembly there that's big enough for 65-room hotel. So we could all have showered this morning based on the Rinnai water heater that is sitting in the building here right now that I brought in on the lift yesterday. And Alice, who's our architectural relationship manager, who must weigh about 45 kilos dripping wet, she moved it round on our stand, right? So that, to me, was a really interesting example of exactly the point I was trying to make here, that the gas boilers are really light and small and compared to the alternative. So, economical and lightweight equipment. I'm going to talk about the hydrogen gas boiler. Your hydrogen gas boiler is, I'm going to talk about it in a minute, is almost exactly the same as the natural gas or LPG gas boiler, and it'll cost you the same. So there's not going to be a big increase in the boiler cost for getting a hydrogen boiler. So converting to hydrogen. Hopefully you're now all convinced, or not, that electrifying everything is not the way to go, and that we want to keep our gas network going, and what we need to do is change it over to hydrogen. So how are we going to go about doing that? You hear some people saying that converting to hydrogen, it's never going to happen. It's just some bunch of old fossil fuel engineers' dream to try and kick the can down the road and keep the fossil fuel industry going forever. We've done it before. When I started in the gas industry in 1984, we were pretty much just finishing converting from the last gas that we'd used, which was Towns gas. Younger people in the audience will have no idea what I'm talking about, but we'd just converted once. We're going to convert again. If you're from Auckland, hopefully you recognise this picture. It's and its label. It's Victoria Park. What we used to do for 150 odd years before 1970 was we would take coal and we would burn it without enough oxygen. And off the top of the coal would come carbon monoxide, which is not very healthy. And we used to pipe that round the streets, and that was the gas that we burned in our homes. So the appliance in your house took carbon monoxide, added another oxygen molecule to it, released some energy, and produced carbon dioxide as an output. It was a horrible, mucky. Anyone own an apartment at Beaumont Street? They dug a whole lot of dirt out from under your apartments before they built it, because the ground was pretty polluted by the leftovers from this process of burning the coal without enough oxygen. So each little town had its own gasworks. There was no connection of gas from one town to another. So Hokitika had a gasworks. I think Ashburton had a gasworks. Devonport had a gasworks long before the Harbour Bridge. This is obviously a picture of the gasworks in the CBD in Auckland. So there was no high pressure transmission system. You created the gas locally and you took it to the houses. So that's the gasworks. It's now apartments in a Quest Hotel. Beautiful Rinnai boiler system at the Quest Hotel. You would have had a beautiful hot shower if you'd stayed there last night. And then over the back here is what were called gas holders. So it was like an upside down bucket sitting on on some water. And during the day, when there wasn't much load, the plant fed gas to that. They rose up, and then when the peak demand occurred, they sunk down again. And so that's now, what's there now? New World supermarket. So this was what the gas industry was like. In the late 1960s, we found a gas field off Taranaki, and it was a massive gas field by a world scale. And we had so much gas we didn't know what to do with it. And a bloke called Rob Muldoon came up with all sorts of genius ideas that we would power all our cars with gas. So we, for a while, had CNG cars. and that we would convert, as the Germans did in World War II, we would convert gas to petrol. And the methanol plant came out of there. That we would also use gas extensively around the North Island and get rid of our town's gas system and go to natural gas. This is kind of when I started in the gas industry, on the tail end of this process. It's interesting, back then gas was blue flame, it was clean, green, it was replacing coal and oil, and we were sort of the environmental champions. Now, not so much. So, what did we do to convert to natural gas? We found this gas field off Taranaki. Previously, some onshore gas had been found in Taranaki but hadn't really been developed. So we built the Maui platform, and there's now a second platform out there. Big gas treatment plant. The gas in New Zealand's got lots of carbon dioxide in it that we have to strip out. We built a high pressure transmission system, so none of this existed. We built over 2,500 kilometres of high pressure transmission system around the North Island, and that over time replaced all the town's gas plants. The distribution system, the town's gas was distributed at very, very low pressure, 0.4 kilopascals, so very, very low pressures. And it had been around for 100 odd years. The distribution system was knackered. It was cast iron pipes that had corroded away. The joiners between the cast iron pipes were hemp. The town's gas was very wet. It kept the pipes sealed. The natural gas was very dry, so the pipes leaked. So basically, the whole of the distribution system around all the cities was dug up and replaced. Big job. Many of the appliances were kicked out. Lots of people cut off, well, not lots, but some people cut off their gas connections and went electric. Others converted their appliances or replaced them. All the gas meters had to be replaced. They had leather diaphragms. They couldn't be used for the new natural gas. So we had a whole bunch of stuff that we had to do. It was a big job to convert from town's gas to natural gas. So what I want to do is compare the job that we're now faced with converting from natural gas to hydrogen, which is the next logical step. So when we went to all the expense of building a transmission system and replacing our whole gas industry, basically, 2.8 million people in New Zealand. Today we've got 5.1 million. So to me, what that means is we can afford to do it. Obviously, early 1970s, the POMs kicked us out of being able to ship any sheep to them. We had an oil shock, so we had lots of economic problems in New Zealand. Today, New Zealand is in a lot better state than what it was in the early 1970s when we did this work first time. Transmission network we built, 2,500 kilometres. Natural gas to hydrogen, I haven't spoken about it a lot. Where are we going to get the hydrogen from? My vision is that we send the Aussies packing. We build, so to make hydrogen, to make green hydrogen, we need a green source of electricity, and we split the hydrogen off the oxygen and make environmentally friendly hydrogen. To me, the logical place to do that is Southwestland. The problem with making electricity and shifting the electricity from Southwestland is we lose a lot of it along the way. Shifting gas, we lose almost none of it. The process of electrolyser, the efficiency of converting water to hydrogen using lots of electricity is about 80%, and that's forecast to improve to about 90% efficiency, and then we can shift it to your house in Whangarei and we lose almost none of it in that process. There's some minor reconfiguration of the existing North Island distribution system required. We had to build the Maui platform. We built 2 Maui platforms in the end and a Kapuni treatment plant. We'd have to get an electrolyser somewhere. And we could build more Manapuris. We could build Manapuri. Manapuri, if you don't know, Google it. It's the cleverest power station you've ever seen. It's very low, says me, environmental impact. It doesn't have a big dam wall with a big lake behind it. It's kind of hidden underground. It's very cool engineering. So build more Manapuris, build some Manapuris at Te Anau, make lots of electricity down there and ship gas at very low losses around the country. The distribution network, as I said, for Towns Gas, we had to delete the whole thing. We're not going to have to do very much to the distribution network at all. As we go past with our nice new hydrogen network, we can rebuild gas networks in other places. So industry can come to smaller towns where it used to be that has ended up gravitating to the North Island because there's no reasonably available gas in the South Island. Gas meters all had to be replaced. We just have to give them a bit of a tweak and we're off to the races. The appliances have to be converted or replaced. We can convert appliances as we make a change, or we can replace them ahead of time. The piping in your house, again, was very low pressure, the Towns Gas piping. Over time, most of that's been replaced. Most of the piping in your house today should be able to take 100% hydrogen without any issue. So this is the first gas plan for what's going to happen. We are going to start putting hydrogen into the natural gas network. Obviously, every percent of hydrogen we put into the natural gas network is a percent less emissions that comes out of the appliances on the end. Most of certainly the water heaters and many of the flame fires that are in your houses today will burn up to 20 or 30% hydrogen without you even knowing. So a lot of hydrogen can go into the network, a lot of emissions can be reduced without very much having to happen at all. After that happens, the next step is to convert the network over to completely hydrogen. If we look at, on the left is a gas boiler that's sitting on the Rinnai stand at the moment. On the right is the hydrogen equivalent. They are very similar. There is one real component that has a major difference, which is that little splodge in the middle. In order to safely detect and shut off the flame, if it fails, we have to have a different system. So your hydrogen boiler is going to cost the same as your current gas boiler. Your hydrogen boiler will burn natural gas, so your next boiler replacement is likely to be a boiler that will be able to burn all natural gas, some mix, or pure hydrogen. Any questions? I've got 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you so much. I'm going to walk around here. I saw a hand.
So, thank you for a very interesting talk. And my question is there any buy-in from the council and the central government in your scheme? And if so, how far is the stage of development? I ask this question because in your scheme, we need to make the hydrogen. And recently, we saw the major city having a contradiction with the central government trying to solve water problem, which is simply delivering water from reservoir to houses. And in your case, you have to make the hydrogen before you can develop.
Okay, so good question. We've got to make the hydrogen. This is not a small job, right? Neither was using the Maui field, right? So I think we can do it. The good news is the Climate Change Commission, their original proposal was that new gas connections were going to be banned and over time gas was going to be phased out. In their final advice to the government, the Climate Change Commission have wound that back a lot and agree that gas has a part to play in the future energy supply of New Zealand. If we all want to drive Teslas, and this is the bit where the government, big surprise, and it doesn't matter the government of which stripe is being slightly disingenuous. If we want to drive Teslas, we're going to have to get a whole lot of electricity from somewhere, and we don't have a good proposal to get a whole lot of electricity from somewhere. If you're an environment, when I was growing up over the water in Devonport, a lukewarm shower from a very small electric cylinder was the norm in our house, right? Certainly my son has no conception of what that's like. We have endless hot water at our place. If we don't do something like this, a lukewarm shower is going to be what we end up with. My plan, because I can dream, because I'm an academic, is to make hydrogen at Manapuri. To me, that's what makes sense. Contact Energy and some others are contemplating using power from South Westland to make hydrogen and export it. I think that's crazy. I think we should be using it here. First Gas, where that slide was from, they actually their plan in the interim is to have smaller electrolyzers making hydrogen at different parts so they can convert the network step by step. But certainly, you're absolutely right, there is no clear plan for who's going to pony up to make the hydrogen. Equally, there is no clear plan for where the electricity is going to come from for all our Teslas.
Thank you so much. I'll get another one. I saw this one first, but I'll a little close to a speaker, I guess.
Hi, just a couple of questions. On the residential scale, when it comes to Rinnai, are you going to be supplying hydrogen to residential units in like bottled format if you're not on a natural or on a gas line? So what are the options there? Also, are you looking at methane, which is the other? Looking at the methane possibility of gas now, which is a lot of recycling with the food scraps, and that's generating as well. Okay. Is that going to come into the market too? Is that going to combine with hydrogen, or how is that actually going to work? Sort of moving forward residentially.
Okay, so the first bit, the bottled gas. Lots of people have bottled gas. Many people have bottled gas because it's expensive to connect to the gas main that's conveniently running past their house. Lots of people don't have a gas main running past their house. For bottled gas, the plan is to blend biogas with it. I think that up to an extent that will make the bottled gas greener. I don't think you would have compressed hydrogen in a cylinder sitting outside your house. The second question about methane, which is what's mostly in natural gas, I'm not sure I fully understand that. The Japanese tend to do plan to do some techo stuff with methane that I don't have time to go into, that would mean they wouldn't have to convert anything at all. But I doubt we would do that in New Zealand.
All right. Yeah, I think
but I'm happy to talk to you later if you want to come and bail me up. Yeah.
I think there was another question over here. I'm right next to you. Hi.
So my question's kind of got two parts to it, and it's around, you've spoken about the cost of the equipment and upgrading the network, but what about the costs of supply, so to the end user, with, I guess, in the context of the prospect of potentially shifting vehicles to also be powered by hydrogen?
Yeah. Okay, so big question, short amount of time. Right now, natural gas, why do all the buildings use natural gas around here, apart from the fact we can get it to them? Natural gas is a third the price of electricity, right? So there's lots of doom and gloom about how gas prices are going up, absolutely no doubt about that. When hydrogen comes, the gas price will go up. Bet your house on it. At the same time as people, because I'm clearly completely unbiased, at the same time people are running down the gas industry, there's not a lot of talk about what's going to happen to electricity prices. It's like electricity is going to stay the same somehow magically, and the price of gas is going to go way up. If we're all going to go home and plug our Teslas in, and we're going to increase demand for electricity by a lot, I'm an engineer, not an economist, but I think the price of electricity is going to wander its way up quite significantly. So because we're starting with gas from a point where it's so much cheaper than electricity, we've got a long way that it can move and still be competitive with the electricity. But it's going to be expensive to use an electrolyser to make gas. There's no question about it. And sorry, I forgot your second part of your question. I've got 7 seconds, so we're out of time.
I think that might have been all of it. And yeah, we're a little bit out of time. Sorry, guys. Well, thank you so much. Dr. Grant Bourke, give him a round of applause, please.
Thank you.